Zektar adjusted his observation equipment for the third time that morning. The small Vorthon scout ship hung in space, far beyond the detection range of the primitive human colony below. Through his screens he watched the third planet of the Kepler 442 system rotate slowly, its blue oceans and white clouds looking deceptively peaceful. The assignment had seemed routine when Intelligence Command gave it to him 6 months ago. Another newly discovered species, another primitive world to catalog before the Confederacy decided whether to conquer or ignore it. Zektar had done this work dozens of times before. Most species barely qualified as intelligent life. Their technology was crude, their military forces laughable, their surrender inevitable. Humans appeared to follow the same pattern. Their ships were ugly blocks of metal and ceramic, held together with visible welds and external piping. No elegant curves, no energy shields, no particle beam weapons. The colonists on Kepler 440 had arrived in converted cargo haulers that leaked atmosphere and required constant maintenance. Zektar had watched them for weeks, taking notes on their primitive fusion drives and chemical propulsion systems. The colony itself looked like a collection of metal boxes scattered across a valley. About 300 humans lived there, growing food in greenhouses and mining or from the nearby hills. They had one small spaceport, a few communication towers, and a handful of defensive installations that barely qualified as weapons captain. Jake Morrison commanded the human defense force with 12 patrol craft that looked more like flying scrap heaps than military vessels. The man himself was unremarkable by Vorthan standards. Medium height, brown hair, calm eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. He spoke quietly to his people and never raised his voice during the daily briefings that Zektar monitored. Through intercepted communications, what puzzled Zektar was Morrison's behavior when the first Vorthon scout probes entered the system 3 weeks ago. Most species either panicked or tried to hide when they detected superior technology. Some attempted to communicate or surrender immediately. Morrison did none of these things. Instead, he gathered his pilots and began what he called tactical analysis. The humans spent days studying the probe flights, tracking their movements, measuring their speed and scanning capabilities. Morrison's people took detailed notes about everything the Vorthan scouts did. They recorded flight patterns, energy signatures, and communication frequencies with methodical precision that impressed even Zektar. Commander Lisa Hayes led most of these observation missions. She was younger than Morrison, with short blonde hair and quick reflexes that made her an excellent pilot. Her patrol craft was typical of human design, functional but ugly, with thick armor plating and redundant systems. When she spoke to her squadron, her voice carried the same calm confidence as Morrison's. During one intercepted conversation, Zektar heard Hayes tell her pilots something that made no sense at the time. She said they were not fighting to win, but fighting to learn. She told them that every encounter with the aliens would teach them something valuable, even if they lost the battle. This struck Zektar as the philosophy of a defeated species, not a military force preparing for combat. The first real engagement happened on a Tuesday morning local time. Zektar was monitoring routine communications when his sensors detected 12 Vorthon reconnaissance drones entering the inner system. The drones were standard military equipment, fast and heavily shielded. Designed to map enemy positions without being destroyed, Morrison's response was immediate but strange. He launched all 12 of his patrol craft to intercept the drones, but his tactical approach made no sense to Zektar. Instead of trying to outmaneuver the superior Vorthan technology, the humans flew directly at the drones in tight formation. Hayes led the attack personally. Her voice over the radio was steady and professional as she coordinated the intercept. When the drones detected the approaching human ships, they activated their defensive protocols, accelerating away while firing warning shots with their light plasma weapons. The human ships ignored the plasma fire. Their crude armor absorbed the energy bursts without serious damage, and they maintained their direct approach. As they closed distance, Hayes gave an order that shocked Zektar. She told her pilots to ram the drones. The order seemed insane. The human patrol craft were worth millions of credits each, and represented months of construction time. The pilots were trained personnel who had taken years to reach their current skill level. Losing them to destroy simple reconnaissance drones was economically and strategically wasteful, but the humans followed orders without question. Hayes's ship was the first to make contact, slamming into a drone at high speed. At the last second, she activated her ejection seat, firing clear of the collision in a small escape pod. Her ship and the drone both exploded in a brilliant flash of light and debris. The other human pilots followed her example. They drove their ships directly into the remaining drones, ejecting at the last possible moment to survive the impact. Within minutes, the entire Vorthan reconnaissance flight was destroyed. The humans had lost 6 patrol craft and suffered several injuries, but all pilots survived. Zektar watched the rescue operation with growing confusion. Morrison's remaining ships collected the ejection pods efficiently, their crews working with practiced skill to recover their comrades. No one seemed upset about losing half their fleet. Instead, the humans acted like they had achieved a significant victory. The reason became clear during the post-battle analysis. As recovery teams collected debris from the destroyed drones, Zek realized what the humans had really accomplished. They had not simply destroyed the reconnaissance flight, they had captured intact pieces of Vorthan technology. Morrison's engineers immediately began studying the drone fragments. They analyzed the shield generators, examined the plasma weapon components, and reverse-engineered the sensor systems. Within hours, they understood more about Vorthan technology than most species learned after years of contact. Hayes, recovered from her ejection and showing no signs of injury, led the technical analysis. She pointed out design flaws in the Vorthan shields and identified weaknesses in their energy weapons. The ramming attack had not been desperate or primitive. It had been a carefully planned intelligence operation disguised as a military engagement. Zektar filed his daily report that evening, but he struggled to categorize what he had witnessed. The humans had demonstrated both reckless courage and calculating intelligence. They had sacrificed valuable equipment to gain information, treating their own lives and resources as acceptable costs for achieving their goals. In his report, he described the human tactics as crude and wasteful. He noted their willingness to accept casualties and their apparent disregard for economic efficiency. He recommended that the Confederacy proceed with standard conquest protocols, as the humans appeared to lack the technological sophistication to pose a serious threat, but privately, Zektar felt a growing unease. The humans had turned their technological disadvantage into an information-gathering opportunity. They had used their apparent weaknesses as a weapon against superior forces. Most disturbing of all, they had done it with a calm professionalism that suggested this was not desperation, but standard operating procedure. 3 days later, Arison received a communication from the human colonial government. Reinforcements were coming. Admiral Greg Sullivan would arrive within 2 months with a full fleet to defend the colony. Morrison shared this information openly with his people, apparently unconcerned that Vorthan intelligence might intercept the message. Zektar dutifully reported the incoming human reinforcements to his superiors. He recommended that the Confederacy attack before Sullivan arrived, as dealing with 12 primitive patrol craft was preferable to facing an entire human fleet. The recommendation was approved, and War Commander Thexmal was dispatched with a battle group to eliminate the human colony. As he prepared for the coming battle, Zektar reviewed his observations of human behavior. Morrison and his people showed no fear of the approaching Vorthan fleet. They continued their daily routines, training exercises, and equipment maintenance with the same steady professionalism. They had always displayed. The only change was that they began modifying their remaining patrol craft with technology recovered from the destroyed drones. Hayes supervised the installation of improved sensors and communication equipment, while Morrison worked with his engineers to upgrade their weapon systems. Zektar realized that the humans were not waiting passively for reinforcements. They were preparing for another battle, another opportunity to learn about their enemies. The thought sent a chill through his exoskeleton as he began to understand that what he had witnessed was not the desperate flailing of a primitive species. Had watched the humans conduct a classroom exercise in applied warfare. 3 months after the drone incident, Zektar found himself aboard War Commander Thexmal's flagship, The Crimson Talon, the massive Vorthon battleship, was part of a 20-ship battle group sent to eliminate the human colony before reinforcements could arrive. Zektar's role was to provide intelligence analysis and observe human tactical responses for future reference. The journey to Kepler 442 took 2 weeks at maximum warp speed. During the transit, Dexmal held daily briefings where he outlined his strategy for the coming battle. The plan was simple and efficient. The Vorthon ships would emerge from hyperspace in battle formation, demand the humans' immediate surrender, destroy any resistance with overwhelming firepower. Dexmal was a veteran commander with 40 years of experience conquering primitive worlds. He had led successful campaigns against dozens of species, from the crystal beings of Tau Ceti to the hive-minded insects of Wolf. 359. His tactical doctrine was proven and reliable. Superior technology combined with coordinated fleet movements had never failed to achieve quick victory. The war commander studied Zektar's reports with professional interest but showed no concern about human capabilities. 20 Vorthon warships represented enough firepower to sterilize a planet's surface or destroy a fleet 10 times their size. The humans had 12 patrol craft and whatever reinforcements might have arrived. Even if Admiral Sullivan had brought 100 ships, they would still be hopelessly awked. When the battle group dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler system, Zektar immediately began scanning for human vessels. His sensors detected the expected patrol craft near the colony world, but there were additional contacts scattered throughout the system. Sullivan had indeed arrived, and he had brought what appeared to be a substantial fleet. Zektar counted 43 human ships distributed across the inner system. Most were positioned near the asteroid belt that orbited between the second and third planets. The vessels were typical of human design, blocky and functional. With none of the elegant lines that characterize proper warships, many appeared to be converted civilian craft, their hulls modified with additional armor and weapon systems. Admiral Greg Sullivan commanded the human fleet from a ship called the New Denver. The vessel had clearly started life as an industrial mining platform before being converted for military use. Its hull bristled with cargo manipulator arms, mineral processing equipment, and oversized engines designed for moving heavy loads. Someone had bolted missile launchers and energy weapons onto the superstructure, creating a ship that looked more like a flying factory than a warship. Captain Amy Rodriguez served as Sullivan's second-in-command, operating from another converted mining vessel. Her ship, the Prospector's Dream, was even more obviously civilian in origin. The massive cargo bays had been filled with additional fuel tanks and ammunition storage, while the mining lasers had been upgraded to military specifications. Like Sullivan's flagship, it looked crude and improvised compared to proper military construction. Dexamel opened communications with the human fleet using standard Confederacy protocols. His message was broadcast on all frequencies in both Vorthon and translated human languages. The terms were simple: surrender immediately and accept Confederacy rule, or face complete destruction. The humans had 1 hour to respond. Sullivan's reply came within minutes. His voice was calm and professional, with no trace of fear or desperation. He thanked Dexmal for the warning and politely declined the surrender offer. Then he added something that puzzled both the war commander and Zektar. He wished the Vorthon forces good luck in the coming battle. The formal engagement began exactly 1 hour later. Dexmal arranged his ships in a standard attack formation, with heavy cruisers in the center and lighter vessels protecting the flanks. The battle group advanced toward the inner system at moderate speed, energy shields at maximum power and weapon systems fully charged. The human response seemed chaotic and uncoordinated, instead of forming a defensive line or retreating to protect their colony. The human ships scattered throughout the asteroid belt. Some vessels began herding asteroids with their industrial equipment, using tractor beams and pusher fields to move the rocky debris into new positions. Zektar initially assumed this was an attempt to create defensive positions or obstruct Vorthon sensor readings. Using asteroids as cover was a common tactic among primitive species. Though rarely effective against modern military sensors, the humans seemed to be collecting particularly large specimens. rocks the size of small moons that would provide substantial protection against energy weapons. Lieutenant Commander Ben Walker coordinated the human fleet movements from his position aboard the New Denver. His voice carried across the communication channels as he directed individual ships to specific positions within the asteroid field. The humans worked with practiced efficiency, their mining equipment perfectly suited for manipulating large masses in zero gravity. As the Vorthon battle group entered the outer edge of the asteroid belt, Vixmal began the standard bombardment sequence. His ships opened fire with long-range particle beams, targeting the largest human vessels first. The energy weapons struck their targets with devastating force, but the crude human armor proved surprisingly resilient. Several ships suffered damage, but none were destroyed in the opening volley. The human counterattack began immediately, but not in any way Zektar had anticipated. Instead of returning fire with their own weapons, the humans released their carefully positioned asteroids. Rodriguez's ship was the first to act, using its massive tractor beam array to accelerate a kilometer-wide rock directly toward the Vorthon formation. The asteroid moved slowly at first, but the continuous application of force gradually increased its velocity. Other human ships added their own thrust to the massive projectile, using their industrial equipment to push the rock faster and faster. Within minutes, the asteroid was moving at a significant fraction of light speed, its tremendous mass converted into a kinetic weapon of unimaginable power. Dexmal ordered evasive maneuvers. But the Vorthon ships were not designed for rapid course changes. The elegant cruisers and destroyers had been built for grace and firepower, not the sudden acceleration needed to avoid a relativistic projectile. The asteroid struck the heavy cruiser's stellar pride amidships, punching through its energy shields as if they did not exist. The impact was catastrophic. The cruiser's hull simply vaporized where the rock struck, and the resulting explosion tore the ship apart from stem to stern. Debris scattered across thousands of kilometers, glowing white-hot from the tremendous energies released in the collision. 300 Vorthon crew members died instantly, but the humans were just getting started. Rodriguez had already prepared a second asteroid, this one even larger than the first. Walker's calm voice directed the targeting as multiple human ships coordinated their efforts to accelerate the massive rock toward another Vorthon vessel. The destroyer's swift current tried to evade, but the asteroid's trajectory had been calculated with precision that counted for the ship's likely escape routes. The second impact destroyed the destroyer completely, turning the graceful warship into an expanding cloud of superheated plasma. Zektar watched in horror as the humans continued their bombardment, launching asteroid after asteroid at the Vorthon formation. Each impact was preceded by careful calculation and coordination, the humans treating their improvised weapons with the same professional competence they had shown during the drone encounter. Dexmal's battle group tried to adapt to the unexpected threat. The Vorthon ships increased power to their engines and began random evasive maneuvers designed to make targeting impossible. Several vessels attempted to destroy the incoming asteroids with their energy weapons, but the rocks were too large and moving too fast for the particle beams to have significant effect. The massacre continued for nearly an hour. One by one, the Vorthon warships fell victim to the human kinetic bombardment. The cruiser Golden Spear was struck by 2 asteroids simultaneously, its hull cracking like an eggshell before exploding in a brilliant fireball. The destroyer Fleet Runner managed to avoid 3 near misses before a 4th rock caught it during an evasive turn, shearing off the entire forward section. Throughout the battle, the humans maintained their calm professionalism. Walker continued, providing targeting coordinates with the same steady voice he might use to discuss the weather. Rodriguez coordinated the mining operations that prepared each kinetic weapon with practiced efficiency. Sullivan observed the engagement from his converted mining platform, occasionally offering suggestions, but mostly allowing his subordinates to demonstrate their expertise. The turning point came when Dexmal attempted to charge directly through the asteroid field, hoping to close range with the human ships and engage them with conventional weapons. The war commander's flagship, supported by his 3 remaining escorts, accelerated toward the New Denver at maximum speed. Sullivan's response was to release his largest asteroid yet, a chunk of rock and metal nearly 2 kilometers in diameter. The massive projectile had been accelerated by the combined efforts of 12 human ships, their industrial equipment working in perfect coordination to push the asteroid to tremendous velocity. 6 months had passed since the disaster at Kepler 442, and Zektar found himself promoted to Senior Intelligence Analyst. The promotion came with a new assignment aboard the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion, flagship of the largest Confederacy armada ever assembled. 300 warships surrounded him as they dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system. Fleet Admiral Korthvex commanded the armada from the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. She was the Confederacy's most experienced military leader with over 60 years of successful campaigns against dozens of species. The decision to place her in command showed how seriously the High Council now took the human threat. The complete destruction of the Smals battle group had sent shockwaves through the entire Confederacy military establishment. The target was Proxima Station, a human outpost built around the red dwarf star Proxima Centauri. Intelligence reports suggested the station housed nearly 50,000 humans and served as a major supply depot for human colonial expansion. More importantly, it was commanded by Colonel Dan Murphy, human officer whose background had caught the attention of Confederacy analysts. Murphy had spent 20 years in what humans called special forces before accepting his current assignment. His service record included operations on dozens of worlds, usually involving small unit tactics against superior enemy forces. The humans seemed to specialize in this type of warfare, sending tiny groups of soldiers to accomplish missions that should require entire armies. The station itself was an impressive piece of human engineering, though it followed their typical design philosophy of function over form. The central hub was a massive cylinder rotating to provide artificial gravity, surrounded by docking facilities, manufacturing plants, and defensive installations. Solar collectors stretched for kilometers in every direction, feeding power to the station's systems. Zektar studied the defensive preparations as the Confederacy fleet approached. The humans had positioned armed satellites throughout the system and established patrol routes for their small fleet of escort vessels. The defenses looked professional but inadequate against 300 Confederacy warships. Even if every human weapon performed perfectly, it would be overwhelmed within hours. Admiral Korthvex opened communications with the station using standard protocols. Her terms were identical to those that Smil had offered at Kepler 442. Immediate surrender and acceptance of Confederacy rule, or complete destruction. The humans had 1 hour to respond before the bombardment. Murphy's reply was broadcast throughout the system on all frequencies. His voice was calm and measured, with the same professional tone that characterized all human military communications. He acknowledged the Confederacy's superior numbers and firepower, then politely declined the surrender offer. What happened next caught everyone off guard. Murphy began telling stories. The human colonel activated every communication array on Proxima Station and began broadcasting on Confederacy military frequencies. But instead of propaganda or threats, he told detailed accounts of human military history. He described battles from their homeworld's past, conflicts that demonstrated human capabilities in warfare. The first story was about a place called Stalingrad, during something humans called World War II, Murphy explained. How human soldiers had defended a ruined city for months against overwhelming enemy forces. He described urban combat in buildings reduced to rubble, with defenders fighting from basement to basement, room to room. Never surrendering despite impossible odds, Captain Rachel Green, Murphy's intelligence officer, took over the broadcasts during the night shift. Her voice was softer than Murphy's, but carried the same unsettling calm. She told stories about human conflicts in places called Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Somalia. Each account focused on small groups of human soldiers facing superior numbers and winning through determination and tactical flexibility. Zektar monitored these broadcasts with growing unease. The stories were not random entertainment. They were carefully chosen to demonstrate specific aspects of human military doctrine. The humans were conducting psychological warfare using their own history as a weapon against Confederacy morale. The effect on the fleet was subtle but noticeable. Worth and crew members began experiencing what humans called anxiety, Sleep patterns became irregular as off-duty personnel found themselves unable to stop thinking about the broadcast stories. The descriptions of human endurance and willingness to accept casualties created an atmosphere of dread that spread throughout the Armada. Admiral Korthvex ordered communications jamming, but the humans had anticipated this response. Murphy's broadcasts continued on frequencies that changed constantly. Using encryption methods that seemed to adapt faster than Confederacy countermeasures could neutralize them, the stories continued day and night, a steady stream of human military history, delivered with professional competence. Green's broadcasts were particularly effective during the night watches. She described human special forces operations with clinical precision, explaining how small teams had accomplished missions that conventional forces considered impossible. Her accounts of human adaptability and creative problem-solving began to affect Confederacy personnel in ways that no one had anticipated. The psychological pressure mounted as the siege entered its second week. Vorthan officers began reporting strange dreams about urban warfare and guerrilla tactics. Night shifts became exercises in paranoia, as crew members found themselves jumping at shadows and imagining human infiltrators in every dark corner. The breaking point came when equipment failures began plaguing the Confederacy fleet. Navigation. Computers developed intermittent glitches that sent ships off course. Life support systems experienced random fluctuations that left compartments too hot or too cold. Weapons systems occasionally refused to respond to firing commands. Forcing technicians to perform manual restarts, Zektar investigated the malfunctions and discovered their source. The humans were not using conventional electronic warfare or COMPUTER viruses. Instead, they were broadcasting subliminal signals embedded in their story transmissions. The signals were designed to trigger specific responses in Vorthan neural systems, causing stress reactions that led to mistakes and equipment errors. The realization that humans were conducting biological warfare using radio waves sent shock waves through the fleet command structure. Admiral Korthvex convened an emergency staff meeting to address the crisis. Her senior officers looked haggard after 2 weeks of interrupted sleep and constant psychological pressure. During the meeting, Murphy made his first direct military move. A small group of human commandos, traveling in captured Confederacy shuttles, infiltrated 3 Vorthon vessels during the shift change. The humans had somehow acquired proper uniforms and identification codes, allowing them to move freely through the ships until they reached critical systems. The boarding actions were swift and professional. Murphy's commandos disabled the ship's main computers, destroyed their communication equipment, and planted explosive charges throughout the vessels. Then they simply walked back to their shuttles and departed, leaving behind 3 crippled warships and crews too. Shocked to mount an effective response, the captured vessels sent distress signals, but their reports made no sense to the fleet commanders. The human infiltrators had not attempted to capture the ships or take prisoners. They had not stolen technology or gathered intelligence. They had simply demonstrated that Confederacy vessels could be penetrated and neutralized at will. Green's broadcasts that night included detailed accounts of the boarding operations, describing exactly how the humans had bypassed Confederacy security measures. She explained the infiltration techniques with the same calm professionalism she used for historical stories, treating the successful mission like a routine training exercise. The psychological effect was devastating. 3 ships could be infiltrated. So easily, how many others were vulnerable? Confederacy crew members began viewing every maintenance worker and supply technician with suspicion. Security alerts became routine, as personnel reported imaginary intruders and suspicious activities. Admiral Korthvex attempted to restore order by tightening security protocols and restricting access to sensitive areas. But the measures only increased the sense of paranoia that gripped the fleet. The humans had weaponized fear itself, turning the Confederacy's own defensive instincts against them. Murphy's final psychological assault came during the 3rd week of the siege. Instead of historical stories, he began broadcasting technical specifications for human weapons and defensive systems. He described the kinetic bombardment techniques used at Kepler 442, explaining exactly how converted mining equipment could destroy conventional warships. But the most disturbing broadcasts were Murphy's descriptions of human defensive preparations. He explained how every human installation was designed to continue fighting even after suffering catastrophic damage. He described backup systems, hidden weapons caches, and survival protocols that would allow human defenders to resist occupation. Forces for years, the breaking point came when Murphy demonstrated these defensive capabilities. During a routine patrol near Proxima Station, a Confederacy squadron detected what appeared to be a disabled human transport vessel. The emergency council meeting took place on Vorthon Prime, the Confederacy's capital world. Zekdar sat in the observer section of the Great Assembly Hall, watching as the highest military commanders and political leaders debated the human crisis. The defeat at Proxima Station had shaken the Confederacy to its core. Desperate measures were now under consideration. Grand Admiral Kepler stood over the meeting from her position at the center of the circular chamber. She was the supreme commander of all Confederacy military forces, a position she had held for over 30 years. Her record was spotless until the humans appeared. Now she faced the greatest threat in Confederacy history with conventional tactics. That seemed useless against human ingenuity. The debate centered on a single proposal. Humans could not be defeated through conventional warfare. They would be eliminated through total destruction. Every human world would be sterilized, every human ship destroyed, every member of their species exterminated. The proposal was extreme even by Confederacy standards. But the recent military disasters had convinced many leaders that half measures would not work. War Minister Jextel argued for immediate implementation of the extinction protocol. His presentation included detailed analysis of human military capabilities, showing how each engagement had resulted in Confederacy losses despite overwhelming technological advantages. The humans were learning faster than the Confederacy could adapt, making them an existential threat to galactic civilization. The decision was unanimous. Within 48 hours, the largest fleet in Confederacy history would depart for the Sol system to destroy Earth and end the human threat forever. Supporting fleets would simultaneously attack every known human colony, ensuring that no member of their species survived to threaten galactic peace. But Grand Admiral Kepler made one critical error in her planning. She concentrated the majority of Confederacy naval forces for the assault on Earth, leaving other strategic locations with minimal defenses. The humans had been monitoring Confederacy communications for months, and they understood the implications of the massive fleet movements. Commander Steve Parker received his orders while commanding a small human task force in the Outer Rim territories. His mission was simple in concept but impossible in execution. Lead 4 ships in an attack on Altair Prime, the Confederacy's primary military shipyard and industrial center. Destroy the facilities that produced Confederacy warships and cripple their ability to continue the war. Parker's force consisted of 4 heavily modified vessels, each stripped down to bare essentials for maximum speed and maneuverability. Crews had been reduced to skeleton staffs, with volunteers accepting the mission knowing they would not return home. Every unnecessary system had been removed to make room for additional weapons and fuel. Captain Laura Bennett commanded the converted freighter Determination, a massive cargo vessel that had been transformed into a guided missile. The ship's holds were packed with high-yield explosives and fusion warheads, enough destructive power to level a city. Her crew consisted of 12 volunteers, all specialists in navigation and demolition. Major Alex Roberts served as Parker's tactical coordinator, operating from the modified destroyer Vengeance. His background was in military engineering, with extensive experience in demolition and sabotage operations. Roberts had spent months studying Altair Prime's industrial infrastructure, identifying critical targets, and planning the most effective methods of destruction. The journey to Altair Prime took 3 weeks at maximum speed. During the transit, Parker's crews made final preparations for their suicide mission. They practiced navigation procedures, reviewed target assignments, and conducted equipment checks with the same professional competence that characterized all human military operations. Zekdar learned about the human attack through intercepted communications between Confederacy outposts. The reports were fragmented and confused, but they painted a picture of human vessels moving through deep space toward the Altair system. The attacking force was absurdly small compared to the defenses protecting the shipyards. But recent experience had taught everyone to take human military operations seriously. Altair Prime was the crown jewel of Confederacy military production. The planet housed massive industrial complexes that could produce hundreds of warships per year, supported by orbital shipyards that stretched for thousands of kilometers around the world. Millions of workers lived on the planet's surface, maintaining the factories and refineries that supplied the Confederacy military machine. The defensive systems protecting Altair Prime were considered impregnable. Energy shields covered the planet's surface, supported by orbital defense platforms armed with the most advanced weapons in the Confederacy arsenal. A permanent fleet of 50 warships patrolled the system, ready to respond to any threat. Parker's attack began at the outer edge of the Altair system, where his ships encountered the first line of defense platforms, instead of engaging the weapons. Installations, the human vessels used their superior speed to race past the defensive line, accepting damage from energy weapons rather than stopping to fight. The Determination took the worst punishment during the approach. Bennett's ship absorbed dozens of direct hits from particle beam weapons, its improvised armor glowing white-hot from the tremendous energy bombardment. But the converted freighter maintained course, its engines running at dangerous overload levels to maintain maximum velocity. Roberts coordinated the attack from his position aboard the Vengeance, his calm voice directing individual ships toward their assigned targets. Human vessels scattered as they entered the inner system, each heading for specific installations on the planet's surface. The orbital defenses tried to track multiple targets simultaneously, but the human ships were moving too fast for effective fire control. Bennett's ship was the first to reach its target. The Determination dove directly into Altair Prime's atmosphere, its hull beginning to glow from atmospheric friction. The Confederacy defense platforms fired everything they had at the approaching vessel. But Bennett maintained course with inhuman determination. Her target was the planet's primary fusion reactor, a massive installation that provided power to the entire industrial complex. The reactor was protected by multiple layers of energy shields and physical barriers, designed to withstand any conventional attack. But the Determination was not a conventional weapon. Bennett piloted her ship directly into the reactor complex, using the vessel's tremendous kinetic energy to punch through the defensive systems. The impact triggered a chain reaction that turned the fusion plant into a miniature star, releasing enough energy to vaporize everything within a radius. The explosion was visible from orbit as a brilliant flash of light that temporarily outshone Altair Prime's sun. The shockwave that followed leveled industrial complexes across an entire continent, destroying centuries of construction in a matter of seconds. The planet's industrial capacity was crippled in a single devastating blow. But Parker's attack was just beginning. While Bennett sacrificed herself to destroy the fusion reactor, the other human ships targeted the orbital shipyards with surgical precision. Roberts used his engineering expertise to identify the most critical support structures, the key points whose destruction would cause maximum damage to the vast construction facilities. The modified destroyer Vengeance crashed into the main assembly complex, its hull packed with shaped charges designed to sever the shipyard's structural framework. The explosion cut the massive installation in half, sending both sections tumbling toward the planet's surface in a cascade of twisted metal and escaping atmosphere. Parker's own ship, the cruiser Defiance, targeted the shipyard's control center. The facility housed the master computers that coordinated construction activities across hundreds of individual work sites. Its destruction would prevent any attempt to restore production capacity using surviving equipment. The human commander piloted his vessel through a maze of defensive fire, using his ship's maneuverability to avoid the worst of the energy weapon, bombardment. As he approached the control center, Parker transmitted a final message to his crew, thanking them for their service and expressing confidence that their sacrifice would save human lives. The Defiance struck the control center at tremendous velocity, the impact triggering a series of secondary explosions that spread throughout the orbital complex. Computer systems failed in cascading waves as the destruction spread from facility to facility, leaving the shipyards without central coordination. The fourth human vessel completed the attack by targeting the orbital defense platforms themselves. The converted transport ship Retribution had been modified with a massive demolition charge. A single weapon designed to destroy the most heavily defended installation in the system. Captain Nicole Ford commanded the Retribution during its final approach to the primary defense platform. Her ship absorbed incredible punishment from the platform's weapons, its hull disintegrating under the concentrated fire. But Ford maintained course until the last possible moment, detonating her ship's cargo of explosives in contact with the platform's main reactor. The resulting explosion created a chain reaction that destroyed every defense platform in the system. The approach to Earth took 2 months at maximum hyperspace velocity. Zektar watched from the bridge of the Eternal Dominion as Grand Admiral Kethfer's armada emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 2,000 warships spread across space in the largest military formation ever assembled by the Confederacy. The fleet carried enough firepower to destroy entire star systems and had one simple mission: complete extermination of the human species. Kethfer stood at the center of the command bridge, studying tactical displays that showed every human installation. In the system, Earth itself was heavily defended, surrounded by orbital platforms and protected by scattered fleets of human warships. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter had been converted into a massive weapons platform, with mining installations transformed into missile batteries and kinetic bombardment systems. General Kate Sullivan commanded the human defense forces from a command station built into the ruins of Luna City. The moon's surface was covered with weapon emplacements and shield generators, turning Earth's satellite into a fortress that protected the approach routes to the human homeworld. Sullivan had spent months preparing for this battle, knowing that the survival of her entire species depended on the next few hours. The human fleet was smaller than expected, numbering fewer than 800 ships scattered throughout the solar system. Many vessels were obviously converted civilian craft, their hulls modified with additional armor and weapon systems. Mining ships, cargo haulers, passenger liners, and industrial platforms had all been pressed into military service for humanities. Final battles, Zektar studied the defensive arrangements with professional interest. The humans had positioned their forces to maximize the effectiveness of their improvised weapons while minimizing their exposure to Confederacy firepower. Mining platforms in the asteroid belt could launch kinetic projectiles at any approaching Talix fleet, while converted cargo ships provided mobile missile platforms that could strike from unexpected directions. Colonel Peter North commanded the asteroid belt defenses from his position aboard the mining station New Frontier. His installation had been converted into a massive railgun capable of accelerating chunks of rock to tremendous velocities. Similar weapons were scattered throughout the belt, creating a defensive network that could destroy approaching ships. From extreme range, the battle began when Kethfer ordered her fleet to advance in standard formation. The Confederacy ships moved in elegant lines toward the inner system, their energy shields at maximum power and weapon systems fully charged. The plan was to overwhelm human defenses through concentrated firepower, destroying each defensive position before advancing to the next. North's response was immediate and devastating. His railgun launched a barrage of kinetic projectiles at the approaching Confederacy fleet, each chunk of accelerated rock carrying the destructive power of a nuclear weapon. The improvised artillery struck the leading Confederacy ships with tremendous force, punching through energy shields and turning elegant warships into expanding clouds of debris. But the humans were not content to fight a defensive battle. Captain Nicole Davis coordinated Earth's orbital defenses from her command post in the ruins of Geneva Station. Instead of waiting for the Confederacy fleet to approach, she launched every available missile in a massive alpha strike designed to cripple the enemy formation before it could close range. Thousands of missiles streamed toward the Confederacy fleet, their warheads programmed to detonate in coordinated waves that would overwhelm defensive systems. The Confederacy ships activated their point defense weapons, destroying hundreds of incoming projectiles. But the sheer volume of the attack made complete interception impossible. The missile barrage struck the Confederacy formation with devastating effect. Dozens of warships disappeared in brilliant explosions as nuclear warheads found their targets. The elegant battle lines dissolved into chaos as surviving ships scattered to avoid the continuing bombardment. Zektar watched the tactical display with growing amazement. The humans were not fighting to delay their extinction, but fighting to win. Every weapon system in the solar system had been coordinated into a single devastating assault that turned the Confederacy's numerical advantage into a liability. The tightly packed formation that should have provided mutual protection had become a target-rich environment for human weapons. Admiral Jennifer White commanded humanity's reserve fleet from her position aboard the battleship Endurance. The massive vessel had started life as a colony ship designed to transport thousands of settlers to distant worlds. Human engineers had converted it into a warship by filling the passenger compartments with additional armor and weapon systems. White waited until the Confederacy fleet had committed to its attack before revealing her true strategy. The human reserves had been hiding in the shadow of Earth's moon, their ships powered down and using passive sensors to avoid detection. When Kepler's forces engaged the orbital defenses, White led her fleet in a flanking attack that caught the Confederacy ships completely off guard. The Endurance emerged from behind the moon like a massive battering ram, its improvised weapons blazing as it charged directly toward the Confederacy flagship. White's ship absorbed tremendous punishment from enemy fire, but its converted hull could withstand damage that would destroy purpose-built warships. The human admiral coordinated her attack with the same calm professionalism that characterized all human military operations. Her voice carried across the communication channels as she directed individual ships towards specific targets, treating the desperate battle like a routine training exercise. But the most shocking aspect of the human defense was the complete absence of panic or desperation. As Confederacy ships broke through the outer defensive lines and began bombarding Earth's surface, the human defenders maintained their disciplined response. Cities burned under orbital bombardment, but the military communications remained professional and focused. Davis coordinated the defense of Earth's orbital elevators with mechanical precision. When Confederacy forces approached the massive structures, she activated pre-positioned demolition charges that turned the elevators into kinetic weapons. The falling cables swept through space like enormous whips, destroying any ship unfortunate enough to be caught in their path. The psychological effect on the Confederacy forces was devastating. The humans were losing their homeworld but fighting as if victory was still possible. Every defensive position continued operating until physically destroyed, and human personnel showed no signs of surrender even when facing hopeless odds. Kepler attempted to restore order to her formation by concentrating her remaining ships for a final assault on Earth's surface. The Grand Admiral planned to use her fleet's overwhelming firepower to sterilize the human homeworld, ending the battle through brute force application. White's response was to launch the Endurance. In a direct attack on the Confederacy flagship, her ship was already dying, its hull breached in dozens of places and its crew taking massive casualties. But White maintained course toward Kepler's vessel, using the battleship as a guided missile in humanity's final desperate gambit. The collision between the two flagships was visible throughout the solar system as a brilliant flash of released energy. The Endurance struck the Eternal Dominion at tremendous velocity, the impact vaporizing both vessels and killing everyone aboard. Kepler died with her ship, along with the senior command staff that had planned humanity's extinction. The death of the Grand Admiral threw the Confederacy fleet into complete chaos. Without central coordination, individual ship commanders began making independent decisions about whether to continue the attack or retreat to safety. The disciplined formation that had entered the system dissolved into a mob of confused and demoralized warships. Sullivan seized the opportunity to launch a final counterattack using every remaining human vessel in the system. Mining ships, cargo haulers, and damaged warships charged toward the scattered Confederacy forces, their crews accepting certain death to inflict maximum damage on the enemy fleet. The battle's climax came when the human transport ship Liberty, carrying 3,000 civilian evacuees, rammed a Confederacy cruiser that was bombing refugee centers on Earth's surface. The transport's captain had made the decision without orders, sacrificing his ship and passengers to protect other civilians from orbital bombardment. Zekdar escaped the destruction in a life pod when his observation ship was caught in the crossfire between retreating Confederacy vessels and pursuing human forces. As his pod drifted through the wreckage of the largest fleet in galactic history, he realized he was witnessing the end of Confederacy military supremacy. The humans had lost Earth, their homeworld burned from orbital bombardment, and billions of their people had died in the fighting. But they had destroyed the Confederacy's ability to continue the war, eliminating the fleet that represented centuries of military construction and strategic planning. More importantly, they had demonstrated something that would haunt the galaxy. For generations to come, an entire species had fought as a single organism, with every individual willing to sacrifice themselves for the survival of their race. There had been no civilians in the human fleet, no non-combatants seeking safety.